All right, what's going on, everybody? How are we all doing tonight? Happy Monday. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Leading the Charge. Mandatory minicamp Eve, if that's a thing. I see Joe in the waiting room. Can we pop Joe up? Hi, Joe.
Hello, Matthew.
How was your water? Was it delicious?
Refreshing.
It was refreshing. Hey, look at that. No free ads, but I just get one of these large iced coffees and then just fill it all day with water. Because you know that good water filter thing we've got here?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. You got to take advantage of that. Saving money and the planet.
With a plastic
Although
cup.
I don't think you're supposed to drink out of these like all day.
Yeah, no,
Whatever.
definitely not.
I'm not too concerned. So we're live, Joe. When the show actually starts on TV, we'll probably pop you off for like 30 seconds just so I can say hi, and then we'll bring you back in.
Okay.
Who do you think we're going to talk about?
Josh Allen with his wedding ring.
Did you see the picture?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Julie and I were talking about this a little bit ago? So I also have one of those like rubber wedding rings. Mm-hmm. Do you think he goes on Amazon and just searches rubber wedding ring? Because these are like $3. Or does he have like a designer rubber wedding ring?
Since he's worth, upwards between him and his wife now, upwards of, near $1 billion now, probably not the Amazon route is my guess.
But he could stay in that tax bracket if he only buys $3 rubber wedding rings. That is a tongue twister. Tongue twister. True. Rubber wedding ring. Try saying that. That's very difficult. You don't have to try saying it, Joe.
I thought that was rhetorical.
So you have this week, and then what? A couple more weeks, and then some time off?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm off beginning June 19th.
Wow.
It's wonderful.
I absolutely love that for you.
Yep.
All right, we are going to pop Joe off. Joe, I'll talk to you in like a minute. Thank you.
Sounds good, buddy.
We've already got a couple James Cook comments, but let's save some of the James Cook comments until after Joe is gone, just because I'm solo. So it'll be easier to fill time with some of the comments, as long as they're not super mean. Well, it is Monday, which means it is time for another episode of Leading the Charge. What is going on, everyone? I'm 7 Sports Director Matt Bove here in the Channel 7 studios, getting you ready for Buffalo Bills mandatory minicamp. That begins tomorrow morning around noon. The Bills will hit the practice field at 12:30, and when they are out on the practice field, all eyes will be on whether or not one notable member of the Bills is there with the rest of his team. James Cook watch is officially on. He had not been at any of the voluntary workouts over the course of the last couple weeks. That was not necessarily a huge surprise, but now things, of course, get to a different magnitude now that we're at the mandatory part of the offseason. That mandatory word is very important. So we are joined this evening, for at least the start of the show, by our contributor, Joe Buscaglia. Hi, Joe. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm great, Matt. What's going on?
Well, my question is, what do you think? You think he's there tomorrow? James Cook, what do you think?
If I had to guess, I think he's there just because he would get fined if not. The Bills have kind of said all the right things when it comes to James Cook, saying that they've been in contact and that he's going to be there when he feels the time is right. I think it's a convoluted situation because there's contract at play here, and whether or not the Bills are actually going to play ball with the type of money that James Cook wants is another question in its entirety. But I think for Cook, even if he were to miss this week, it doesn't really make sense for him to hold out or hold in, I should say, seeing as how he would lose an accrued season if he holds out for too long. And it wouldn't make too much sense for him because he's still trying to get to a payday to whenever this 2025 season is over and it gets to free agency and everything along those lines. So, I tend to not make too great of a big of a deal of this whole thing, just because, James Cook, he's going to do what he's going to do. And it's literally 3 days in the month of June. And, at the end of things, if he shows up to camp, no one cares. But his checkbook might get hit a little bit if he doesn't show up.
So this is one of the things that I have said for a couple months now while the James Cook stuff has been going on, and I want to get your take on this. Now, this is crazy because it's relative, right? James Cook is going to make a little bit more than $5 million this season. But one of my points for the last several months has been that James Cook doesn't make enough money to hold out in the way that you need to hold out to really kind of send a message. I understand the 3 days of mandatory minicamp would not completely destroy his paycheck and his wallet. But I don't think this is going to training camp. And if he's holding out in training camp, he doesn't make enough money to be taking those fines on the chin.
Yeah, and the biggest piece about this is if he holds out, then, we're starting to get into the land of accrued seasons. And if he doesn't get an accrued season here, then he's still under contract next year. So it behooves him to show up. It behooves him to have another good season and build on what he did last year. And if he didn't get the contract extension that a lot of the guys did, like Rousseau, like Benford, like Shakir, like Terrell Bernard. But I think it's a little bit of a different situation because those guys weren't resetting the market for their own position. They weren't getting in even to the top 5 realm of their own positions. Whereas, James Cook, that's kind of what he wants here. And are the Bills really willing to pay $15 million per year to a player on offense that played under 50% of snaps last year? It's kind of and was for the most part a 1A in a 1A 1B situation last year with Ty Johnson. So they like it, they love him. They're saying all the right things. They love him in the locker room. I don't think this is like a personality driven thing whatsoever. I think it's just a matter of him wanting to put his best foot forward to try and get paid and to voice his displeasure with however he wants to. But at the end of the day, even if he misses these 3 days, I don't think it matters much because it's worth it to him more than not to go to training camp and to have a good season for the Bills.
What's the number, right? I know Brandon Beane told us at the NFL owners meetings that he did not anticipate something happening with James Cook. So clearly, in my mind, let's pretend that we're in their position, right? James Cook has a number that he wants to get paid, and it's been said on social media that that's around $15 million. Then you have the Bills side. Now, we don't know what the number the Bills would feel comfortable paying James Cook is. What do you think it should be? What would be the number that you would be willing to pay James Cook if you were Brandon Beane to kind of end all of the nonsense that's taken place over the last couple months?
If it's me, I'm a little bit shrewd, so I would say 8 or 9, just because running back position to me, especially when they're running a committee the way that they do, that's not super conducive to how I'd want to build a team. But that's just me. The other part of this is the Bills have never paid a running back for a lucrative second contract. And even though running back is kind of making a revival around the NFL and the running games because of the proliferation of cover 2 high shell defenses that are taking away explosive passing attacks, you're seeing the running game start to percolate a little bit more here. But even with that in mind, I still need to see James Cook be someone that can be out there for 65 to 70% of the snaps. And they just haven't had him do that just yet. And he's a lot older than people think. Like, he's not like he's just 24 years old. He's turning 26 next month. And so then you start to get into with running backs, they get a little bit more wear on the tires a lot quicker. And this is probably why it's so important to James Cook to get a deal locked in. But if it's me, I'm probably just standing pat if I'm the Bills, especially with all of the money that they just shelled out. Their cap space next year is not as good as it was this year. They've already got a ton of owed cap space to a lot of different pieces, especially with all the extensions that they just handed out. And they really have to pick and choose wisely because not only is James Cook a free agent, but so is Connor McGovern, their starting center, and they value that position very highly. David Edwards, their left guard, is a free agent too, so we can't forget about him. And then if you want to go further, Osiris Torrance, who will be a free agent in after the 2026 season. And if he takes the step that I think a lot of people are thinking about, then that's going to be someone else that you have to think about paying near top of market for his position. So this is bigger than just James Cook. And that's why the Bills are being very smart and pragmatic about their approach.
Okay, so I want to bring up what Scott said here on Twitter because I was going to ask you almost the exact same question. He said the Bills hold all the cards. If I was Bean, I would make him play on his deal and then franchise tag him. Isn't that the most obvious thing for the Bills to do? Is not budge this year, franchise tag him next year at what, $13.5, $14 million. I know that's more than they would feel comfortable paying a running back, but then you get him almost all the way to that 28 number that everybody always talks about, and then you reset.
Sure. I would probably, if they were going to go the tag route, I would probably go transition tag, just because that would mean you lock them in at a little bit of a lower rate than what a franchise tag is. And, teams aren't really going out of their way to throw around money for even transition tags.
Especially for running back.
Yeah, that's probably how I would play it if the tag was the way that they were going to go. But the thing I brought up is important. In 2026, right now, if you go over on overthecap.com with their projected cap space, the Bills are around, and this is still without their top three or three of their top picks unsigned to this point. Next year, they're still over $10 million. So they need to work just to get under the cap. So are you throwing $13 million for James Cook? So if you were to extend him, that's a lot different because then that cap number goes way down because you get to control the numbers on the cap and then it's a slow build up. But with a transition tag or a franchise tag, that's a fully guaranteed, as long as he signs it, fully guaranteed 1-year deal. You're not able to split up the money the way that you are with a long-term extension. So that's why this is so difficult and so convoluted, to where the Bills, I think they're really doing their due diligence here. And I don't think they should just throw around a contract extension just because he says he wants one. I think they need to do what's in the best interest of them, and how much is spending, or if you're spending that type of money on a running back, where are you sacrificing elsewhere on your roster when you have a guy in Ray Davis who could probably step in and do a pretty solid job for you if he has to, if James Cook moves on after 2025. So that's why, to me, I think they're playing this the right way right now. And even if it's hurt feelings, he's still going to show up. He's still going to play, and we'll see what happens in 2025.
I keep thinking back to that Monday Night Football game last year against the Jets where Ray Davis was fantastic for the Bills. And because James Cook is not an every down player, you still would have Ty Johnson in your back pocket to do all the things that you love Ty Johnson being able to do. That's not to suggest James Cook is not a good player. But he, I feel like the Bills do have the leverage in this situation. But I want to ask you one not James Cook question. Okay. What is the biggest storyline for the Bills this week, not tied to James Cook?
It's a good question.
I'm full of them, Joe.
Well, Josh is going to be there since we saw a picture of him earlier today. Yes. So that was one of the biggest questions answered. I just kind of want to see how the offense kind of flows together with Keon Coleman, with Joshua Palmer, if Joshua Palmer is back, because last time we saw him, he did not practice after doing something that irritated him. He had to go out into the locker rooms, came back, didn't take another rep. That was on Tuesday. So we'll have to see if he's out there, but he's someone to keep an eye on. Dalton Kincaid, I think whether or not he's kind of like taking many steps forward. I think that is the biggest thing I'll be kind of keeping an eye on this week, because at this point in time, offense is usually out ahead just because defense can't be physical. So you want to see the boxes being checked here, as opposed to like coming away from minicamp going, oh my goodness, Elijah Moore is going to be a 1,500-yard receiver. No, don't take the fool's gold in spring. Just take it for what it is. If receivers are looking good and they're winning one-on-ones, that's a check mark, because that's what they should be doing. So that's what I'll be keeping an eye on.
Oklahoma City Thunder in blank.
5.
Wow. All right. That is Joe Buscaglia. He covers the Bills as well as anybody on the planet. You can read all of his work at The Athletic. You can listen to his podcast at the Buffalo Beat. I was pretty proud of that promo. I thought I did a nice job plugging you there. Thanks for joining, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
All right. We're back on camera now. I thought we were just going to go to the commercial break. If you're watching on TV, don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple minutes. If you're watching on the stream, we'll answer some questions. We were on the wrong page. I thought you were just immediately going to go to break.
You made no indication that we were going.
Well, look at the time.
I was rolling with you.
All right, my bad. See,
42 was your
40. I did say 42 is the number.
number. Yes.
All right. Well, I think that we're pretty happy with that. That was
Doesn't know.
Michelle. I'm sorry. I should have indicated something to you. We need a way to communicate that we're going to the break.
You say,
All right, they're still watching. We'll talk about this afterwards. Let's see. Lori says Dalton is going to shine. Well, Lori, I think Dalton Kincaid is probably, besides James Cook, the player that most Bills fans will have their eyes on this week, just because so much has been said and made about what he did last season and the struggles that they had at the end of the season with him, how he was not involved as much as they certainly would have hoped for a player who was a first-round pick just a couple of years ago. I think back to that game against the Chiefs when the ball is floating in the air on that fourth down. I know it would have been a really tough catch, but it's still one that I think he should have made. And who knows how the outcome of that game changes if he makes that catch. It's a catch you want a first-round pick to be able to make. So I know that he has said he had a hard time playing through the injury that he had last year, and it really lingered for him, and I totally understand that. But they need him to be available this year, but they also need him to be more reliable. They still like Dawson Knox, but Dalton Kincaid needs to be a crucial piece of this offense. And if he's not, then I think we're talking about somebody that they might not be keeping for the long-term future, right? A couple of years ago, or a year ago, I should say, you thought Dalton Kincaid was going to be a crucial member of this team. If he doesn't have a strong season this year, now you're talking about if he's even getting the fifth-year option for the Bills or if they're going to eventually move on from him because he just can't produce or can't stay on the field. But he's got an entire year to prove that he can do that, so we'll see how it plays out. All right, what other questions do we have here, or comments, I should say? Well, this is from Sandra, specifically regarding James Cook. Can't block 10 to 12 with the incentives. So I understand the can't block comment because I don't think it's wrong. There's a reason why he's usually not on the field on third down, and it's Ty Johnson because they trust his blocking more. But he also does so many things well. I've seen a couple people throw it out there that James Cook was the second best player for the Bills last year. I don't agree with that, but I think he was probably in the top 5. So I do think he brings value to your team, but you have to find a number that's right. I like your evaluation that you made, 10 to 12. That's the number I would feel comfortable with if I was the front office. Probably 11 would be the number I would try and settle on. That's still $4 million different, though, than what it sounds like James Cook and his camp wants. That is a lot of money. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get something done. I don't think they're going to get something done before the season starts, but I guess we'll wait and see. How much time until we come back on television? 5 seconds, okay. All right, welcome back on the TV side of things. Thanks for sticking with us after that weird little ending before we took the commercial. I didn't know if Joe was going to keep talking. I didn't know what we were doing, so I apologize. But obviously, like we mentioned when we were talking to Joe, mandatory minicamp begins tomorrow. And there's a lot of different players that I think a lot of Bills fans are excited to watch. During the commercial online, we talked about Dalton Kincaid. I think he's very high on the list. Obviously, whether or not James Cook is going to be there is going to be the main topic of conversation. But then there's Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman is a player who had really big expectations going into last season. And then he started to actually play pretty well at the midpoint of the season. I keep thinking back to that game against Seattle. He was fantastic in that game. It looked like the Bills had found a player who was truly a difference maker on offense. Then he gets hurt the following week against Miami, and then he was never the same after that. So my colleague, Dom Tibbetts, actually sat down with Keon Coleman last week during voluntary workouts, and here's some of that interview. Oh, we lost Wi-Fi. Hold on. I'm going to put it up right now.
Back in March, Buffalo Bills head coach Sean McDermott and general manager Brandon Beane made it clear that wide receiver Keon Coleman needed to take the next step.
As far as Keon goes, I thought he had an up and down first season. I really do. And I mentioned that after the year. I thought he got off to a start that he built momentum through, and then he got injured. And then from there on, it was rather rocky, I would say.
Are there some plays he would want back? Sure. Are there some things he needs to do better? Yes. He's a competitive young man, and I have no doubt that he's going to come back with a refreshed mindset and ready to, if there are doubters, to prove them wrong.
Proving doubters wrong is exactly what Keon plans on doing this season.
I demand greatness from myself, and I love to know that my coaches demand the same level of greatness and we're on the same page about it.
Through the first few weeks of OTAs, his teammates and coaches have already noticed some serious strides.
I'm enjoying seeing the questions that he's asking, his approach, moving him around, doing different things with him, seeing what he can and cannot do. Once the physicality of the game, football's a physical sport, so once the pads come on, that's the biggest thing.
You can see the different in the body too. So it's like, guys, you can see the transformation and see how guys are changing, bodies change. They really care about their craft, and they're really putting in the work to be successful and be the best player that they can for the team.
Whether it's in the weight room or out on the field, Keon's only direction from this point is forward.
It's a new year, so let's finish each game, get through each week, and worry about the rest of that when it comes up. But we got a lot of different things in this bottle, and we're going to shake it, make sure the puzzle get together.
Dom Tibbetts, 7 Sports, Buffalo.
All right, shout out Dom for the sit-down interview with Keon Coleman. I thought he said a lot of things that you want him to say, right? He knows he needs to be better. He also appreciates that the coaches feel the same way, and they're pretty blunt about it. I mean, you heard the clips from Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane. I don't think I would go as far as saying they were calling him out, but when you hear the front office and the coaching staff talk like that, they are trying to send a message, especially to a young player. And of course, the conversation as we kind of worked further into the offseason was all about how he didn't come back the same player after the injury. And it actually took him a week longer to come back, 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks, than he was originally kind of estimated to come back. And that kind of kept the Bills in a weird spot because they had one player that they couldn't have on their active roster. So it ended up hurting them because he was on injured reserve. So I'm very interested to see how Keon Coleman looks this season. Here's a comment from Scott going back to the James Cook conversation we were having earlier. If Cook doesn't play, would you use Curtis Samuel in the backfield like you did at Ohio State? So yeah, it's funny that Curtis Samuel was kind of all over the field when he was at Ohio State. Here's the thing. I don't think they would use him in that situation because, once again, if you don't trust James Cook to block, how are you going to trust Curtis Samuel to block? And if you want to actually have a running back on the field, I think you would be using Ray Davis or Ty Johnson, just because at this point in their careers, I would anticipate they have more juice that they can bring you. Now, Curtis Samuel, I think, is going to have a bigger role in this offense this year than he did last year, but I still don't think we're going to be seeing him taking handoffs in the backfield. Also, I doubt you can hear this on television or online. It is a monsoon outside. Our roof right now, the noise coming from our roof is ridiculous. So I don't know where you are or you're watching this show, but hopefully it's not a monsoon by where you are, or it's not raining ridiculously hard like it is here, because this is pretty crazy. All right. We have one more. Look at this, the magic of television, Doppler. I wish I was a meteorologist or I could see better than I actually can. It looks like the heavy stuff is still in the southern tier, kind of drifting off east towards the Finger Lakes in Rochester. This is my tryout if a meteorologist is ever unavailable. I see it's probably sunny and 80 in Grand Island right now because it's always sunny on Grand Island, and it's probably the same in Wheatfields because there's no better place. And now, as I said that, the rain stops. That is my tryout for meteorologist. On the television side, we are going to take a quick break. We will continue the conversation and hear from Michael Hoyt, the newly signed edge rusher, coming up on the other side of this break. How did I do as the meteorologist guy? Was it okay? Lori, been pouring all afternoon. How did I do? Was it going east towards the Finger Lakes? Dang. Do you have Wi-Fi or is your Wi-Fi gone? Okay. Okay, so you can play the package in the next block. Been pouring all day, Lori says. It just finished in Cheektowaga near the airport. Sandra, excuse me. The noise coming from the roof in this building it's not deafening, but when you have one headset in and then nothing here and I'm muted on the computer, I'm just hearing super loud. So I don't know why I keep paying attention to that. You said name someone, and I did say Derrick Henry. Go Bills. Cooks come in, proof to everyone that you are worth the increase in pay. Gain some leverage because you don't have any right now. Yeah, Carlton, I tend to agree that I don't think he has a ton of leverage. I think the Bills definitely have more leverage in the situation, just because here's the interesting thing about James Cook. Really, really good player. He had 16 rushing touchdowns last season, which tied a franchise record. That is ridiculously impressive. You know how many he had in his career before last year? 4. 4 rushing touchdowns. So he quadrupled his production in one season, which is good, right? You want to see a player ascend and not descend. All of that said, maybe it's an outlier. The other interesting part about all of this is that the Bills can kind of manipulate these numbers a little bit. So it sounds like we're 30 seconds away. So you can take the Michael Hoyt interview? All right, sweet. All right, 57 is the out. Okay, and the Hoyt interview is around 2 minutes, so that'll probably eat up a nice chunk of it. All right, we'll be coming right back in a second, guys. Okay, welcome back, everyone, for our final segment of Leading the Charge on this Monday evening as the Buffalo Bills get ready for mandatory minicamp that begins tomorrow morning. We will hear from Sean McDermott at 11:45. If you are following WKBW on any of our platforms, we will be streaming that press conference live. I'm sure he will break the news of whether or not James Cook is actually at practice, and then we will go out onto the practice field at about 12:30 for the first practice of mandatory minicamp. For those of you at home who do not exactly know what the schedule looks like, well, it'll be 3 days, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then nothing for the Bills will really happen until the team reports to training camp. That is expected to be around the July 22nd, 23rd, 24th range. Somewhere in that date is likely when training camp will begin. And once again, that will be at St. John Fisher in Rochester. So there's a lot of players that we are keeping our eye on. We've already talked about some of the guys on offense, but defensively, one of the new players coming into Buffalo is Michael Hoyt, the edge rusher from the Rams. Now, he is suspended for the first 6 games of the season. I talked to him last week about that and about playing that much closer to home. He's from he's from Oakville, Ontario. Here's that conversation with Michael Hoyt.
Newly added Bills defender Michael Hoyt has already won a Super Bowl with the LA Rams. 3rd and 10. Darnold stepping up. Grabbed by Hoyt. Now he wants to do it for a team much closer to home.
This place was just too attractive to turn down. It seemed like it was going to be too much fun. It's close to home. It's a really good team. Josh has won the MVP. Like, this is kind of where you want to be right now.
Okay, hold up. Let's rewind that.
And it's close to home.
Yeah, he's not kidding. Hoyt is no Buffalo Joe, but he was born in Oakville and still has most of his family and friends in southern Ontario. So now instead of a 6-hour flight, his biggest fans will just need to hop in the car.
This now feels, to me, it was really special that I now get to involve all the people in my life in the journey, and like we just got to bring everybody down. I mean, there's going to be, if you see a giant pod of 50, 55 jerseys, you know who they're there for.
But they won't be there for the start. Hoyt is suspended for the first 6 weeks of the season for violating the NFL's performance-enhancing drug policy.
It's going to suck. Bad situation, and very much my fault.
Now, the team knew about this when they signed him. Hoyt has taken accountability, and while he's disappointed, he's using it as motivation.
It's use that time, get as healthy, as strong, as fast, be mentally prepared, watch all the games, study all the practices, make sure that I'm doing my part such that when you come back, we're ready to roll and can put it behind me.
Hoyt is a player the Bills have looked at for a while now, and so much of that has to do with his versatility.
We looked at him for multiple years as far as Michael goes. So then you try to envision in your mind a role or a piece that he could perform because his role in LA was quite unique.
I guess I never really thought of myself as versatile until I got in the NFL and I was like playing every position. Versatility, I really think is just about, understanding the playbook. And that's not just knowing the playbook, but you really have to understand it to be able to do different spots.
There's no sugarcoating things. The suspension isn't great, but the newest Bill is excited to prove he'll be worth the wait and helping the Bills win games when it matters the most.
That's why it would definitely mean everything to, especially with the new stadium right there. We can just win it, burn it to the ground, and start over in a new stadium next year.
All right, that was Michael Hoyt, the Buffalo Bills' newest edge rusher. I see this comment from John. Josh Palmer is from Canada too, I believe. That is correct, John. He is also from Toronto, so Southern Ontario. Both of them, I believe, are Maple Leaf fans, but now that they'll be in Buffalo, we'll see if they'll change their allegiance. So a lot of storylines for the Bills as they get ready for mandatory minicamp, which is cool, right? Like, this is mostly the same team that went to the AFC Championship last year. A lot of the key players have returned. But there's also some tweaks on both sides of the ball that I think could maybe elevate the Bills to a place that they were trying to go, right? Somebody asked me, are the Bills Super Bowl bound? I don't know. It's way too early to know how good the Bills are going to be. But I do like that the team they've assembled. And I think there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. So James Cook Watch begins now. We'll see if he reports tomorrow morning. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great rest of your Monday night. Have a good week. We'll see you guys next Monday night. All right. Thank you, y'all, for watching on the stream. Lori, dates have coming out yet for training camp? No, the Bills have not released the training camp schedule yet, but that is expected sometime soon. I do believe that it'll be around July 22nd, 23rd will kind of be the first practice day for the Bills. We already know the preseason schedule, so usually they have a couple weeks of practice, and then it's time for their first preseason game. So, yeah, I would expect late July is kind of the target for the Bills. Thanks for watching. We got more than 1,000 people who are watching right now, so we appreciate it. I will say this as a little tease. We got something fun in store for the next several weeks of Leading the Charge. It'll be a little different than how we've been doing this. So I guess you'll find out next Monday night. Have a great week, everyone.